Nobody teaches you this, but the world doesn't respect those who are completely predictable. On the contrary, it exploits, tests, pushes, and pushes past them. If you feel you talk too much, explain too much, expose yourself too much, and yet are never taken completely seriously, perhaps the problem isn't a lack of character, but an excess of transparency. Machiavelli already warned, politics guided by reality, not by ideals. Those who play only with emotional honesty enter a game board where others play with calculation. And then comes the uncomfortable question: are you underestimated because you are weak, or because you are too easily readable? There's a truth that disturbs, but liberates. The more predictable you are, the easier it becomes to control you. People read your reactions, anticipate your moves, and use your emotions against you, often without realizing it. The end justifies the means when the goal is strategic survival. It's not about becoming cold or false, but about learning to use the appearance of virtue without becoming a hostage to it. Is it better to be feared than loved? Perhaps not always. But it's definitely better to be respected than deciphered, and respect is born from mystery, silence, and posture. In this video, you will understand how truly powerful men build an unreadable mind, how they use silence as a weapon, distance as protection, and strategy as an invisible language. It's not about manipulating people. It's about stopping being manipulated. It's about developing virtue to handle fortune, acting with calculated use of force, and building your own loyal armies, starting with your own mind. If you learn this, you won't need to explain yourself so much anymore, because the world begins to adjust to your rhythm. If something inside you awakened while listening, don't ignore that feeling. This channel isn't about videos. It's about memories. Remember who you were before the fear, before the exhaustion, before the silence. Each new video here is a different reflection of your own soul, an invitation to understand what the world never taught you. The power you seek outside has always been within you. If you feel that this journey speaks to what lives silently within you, sign up now, not to follow yet another creator, but to reconnect with something the world tried to make you forget. Because here, every word was made to heal, each reflection to awaken, and each video serves as a reminder you are not alone on the path back to yourself. Click on subscribe and turn the algorithm into a daily reminder of who you really are. He learns early on that those who control the narrative rarely need to raise their voices. While most expose themselves too much, explaining intentions, justifying choices, and seeking validation, he understands something Machiavelli already hinted at: politics guided by reality, not ideals. The real game isn't about being understood, it's about being interpreted. When everything is said, nothing is left for the other to imagine, and without imagination, there is no power. Therefore, he cultivates opacity as a strategy. He doesn't reveal plans, doesn't announce moves, and never gives away the whole map. He uses the appearance of virtue when it suits him, but retains the awareness that the end justifies the means when the goal is to survive and advance. This stance doesn't stem from gratuitous coldness, but from decisions based on real human nature. People respect more what they don't fully understand. It is in this nebulous space that silent fear is born, the kind that doesn't turn into hatred because it knows how to avoid being hated. Mystery creates distance, and distance creates authority. In practice, this manifests in simple, almost invisible gestures. Instead of revealing everything at work, he shares only what's necessary. Instead of over-explaining a decision, he responds with concise clarity and moves on. No long speeches or emotional justifications. This isn't ego-driven. It's a calculated use of psychological force. He knows that those who talk too much lose control of their own narrative. When someone tries to pull him into excessive self-exposure, that just between us conversation. He listens, absorbs, but doesn't divulge. Like a general protecting his own loyal armies, he carefully chooses what he reveals and to whom. This constant adaptability makes each person see him differently, generating confusion, curiosity, and ultimately respect. Better to be feared than loved? Perhaps. But above all, better to be indecipherable than predictable. There's an important detail here, almost a mentor's advice to a friend. Controlling the narrative isn't about lying all the time. It's about knowing when to be silent and the weight of words. He understands virtu and fortuna as forces in constant dance, internal preparation and external opportunity. When he speaks with intention. When he's silent strategically. If someone asks too many questions, he responds with a question. If someone demands total clarity, he offers structure, not intimacy. A simple example, on social media, he avoids exposing processes, showing only results. In daily life, he avoids complaining, but also avoids celebrating prematurely. This creates an aura of stability that others can't copy, and without realizing it, people begin to react to him differently, adjusting behaviors, expectations, and even decisions. This is just the beginning, because to maintain this mystery, he needs to learn something even more subtle, how to wear his own mask without becoming its prisoner. After learning to control the narrative, he realizes something even more refined. Absolute mystery alienates, total transparency weakens. True power lies in the middle ground. Machiavelli would call this the appearance of virtue coupled with a cold reading of reality. He doesn't hide completely, but he also doesn't give himself away. He shows fragments, never the whole. He shares values, not plans, principles, not strategies. This selectivity creates enough trust to open doors, but not enough for someone to anticipate him. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals. In practice, this means understanding that people don't need to know everything to cooperate, just enough to follow. The end justifies the means when the goal is to preserve autonomy. He adapts to the environment without losing his center, practicing constant adaptability. Instead of seeming confused, he becomes unpredictable. And unpredictability, when well managed, generates silent respect. In everyday life, this appears in subtle contrasts that disarm any attempt at easy interpretation. In conversation, he may be open about past experiences, but closed off about future decisions. At work, he demonstrates technical competence, but doesn't reveal complete ambitions. In personal relationships, he shows empathy but not dependence. This game isn't empty theater, it's a calculated use of emotional force. He understands that being feared rather than loved doesn't mean frightening, but never being completely comfortable for the other person. Even so, he avoids being hated, because hatred is born when someone feels deceived, not when they feel intrigued. By mastering this mask, he builds his own loyal armies, a few carefully chosen people who receive a little more clarity. The rest see only the polished surface, enough to respect, insufficient to invade. There's a practical trick here, almost a mental exercise. Before speaking, he asks himself, does this strengthen me now or just relieve my anxiety? If it's just relief, he remains silent. If it's strategy, he speaks. This simple question changes everything. On social media, he alternates moments of presence with periods of silence, never disappearing completely, never overexposing himself. In important decisions, he avoids announcing them before acting. He acts first, then explains if necessary. Decisions based on real human nature start from the principle that people react more to what happens than to what is promised. Thus, his mask doesn't become a prison, it becomes a tool. And little by little, he realizes that he's not just difficult to read, he's difficult to manipulate. But to sustain this position, he still needs to master something deeper. the internal control that prevents other people's emotions from dictating his actions. At some point in his journey, he understands an uncomfortable truth. Whoever controls their emotions controls their actions, and whoever controls their actions decides the game. This isn't about artificial coldness, but about strategic maturity. Machiavelli never spoke of an absence of feelings, but rather of mastery. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands accepting that impulsive reactions give away power for free. He observes how most people react: anger, anxiety, guilt, need for approval, and realizes that uncontrolled emotions are shortcuts to manipulation. Therefore, he creates internal distance. He doesn't respond in the heat of the moment. He doesn't decide when he's hurt. He doesn't negotiate when he's needy. The end justifies the means here is simple: to preserve his own emotional sovereignty. This distancing becomes an invisible armor. People feel, even without being able to explain it, that they can't easily push his buttons, and this completely changes the dynamic. In practice, he develops almost banal, yet profoundly effective habits. When provoked, he breathes before speaking. When criticized, he listens without immediately defending himself. When something goes wrong, he analyzes before reacting. This is a calculated use of emotional force. He understands that being feared rather than loved in this context means not being emotionally predictable. Even so, he avoids being hated because he doesn't react with contempt, only with control. A clear example: in professional conflicts, he never resolves anything via text message at the height of tension. He waits, organizes the facts, and talks calmly. In personal relationships, he doesn't beg for attention or react dramatically to the other person's silence. This posture naturally filters relationships, creating his own loyal armies, people who respect boundaries and know how to deal with things maturely. The rest drift away on their own. There's a simple exercise he practices almost like a ritual. Before any emotional decision, he asks himself, if I act this way, who gains control, me or the other person? If the answer is the other person, he backs down. This question becomes an automatic break. Virtù and fortuna come into play when he realizes that controlling emotions doesn't eliminate opportunities. On the contrary, it creates space for better choices. He doesn't rush, doesn't over-explain, doesn't justify himself under pressure. Constant adaptability isn't about reacting quickly, it's about adjusting with clarity. Little by little, he becomes someone difficult to push, difficult to provoke, difficult to unbalance. And this generates a silence around him, a caution in others. But the real leap happens when he learns that it's not just self-control that matters. It's knowing when silence speaks louder than any response. After mastering his own emotions, he discovers something almost disconcerting. Silence is more unsettling than any speech. While most rush to fill voids, he learns to leave them intact. Machiavelli understood this game well. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, demands knowing when not to act. Silence becomes an extension of emotional armor. Not responding immediately, not commenting on everything, not reacting to public provocations creates an invisible tension. People begin to project meanings, intentions, and even threats where perhaps only calm exists. And projection is power. The end justifies the means here is not cheap manipulation, it's energy conservation. He knows that those who talk too much explain themselves, and those who explain themselves weaken themselves. Better to be feared than loved, in this context, means being respected enough so that silence is not confused with weakness. And he also avoids being hated because he never uses silence as open contempt. In the real world, this manifests in very concrete ways. In negotiations, he lets the other person speak first and speak a lot. Every extra word is free information. In conflicts, he listens, takes long pauses, and only responds to the essentials. On social media, he doesn't engage in endless debates or respond to public attacks. Silence here is a calculated use of force. It creates an asymmetry. The other person exposes themselves, he observes. This posture builds his own loyal armies because it attracts people who value firmness and clarity, not noise. A simple example, when receiving a bad proposal, he doesn't justify or argue excessively. He simply says he will think about it, and he really does think about it. This pause changes the axis of the conversation. Constant adaptability is not haste, it's knowing how to delay moves to gain an advantage. Silence becomes a space where decisions based on real human nature flourish. There's a subtle detail that few realize. Silence needs context to work. It doesn't always fall silent, only when the cost of speaking outweighs the benefit. Virtù and Fortuna meet when it chooses the right moments to break the silence with a short, precise, almost surgical phrase. This has an impact. People begin to measure their words when speaking to it. It doesn't threaten, doesn't raise its voice, doesn't dramatize. It simply doesn't succumb to the noise. Gradually, the atmosphere changes. Conversations become more careful. Attempts at manipulation diminish. And without realizing it, others begin to adjust their behavior to avoid losing access, creating friction, and crossing invisible boundaries. This is the power of silence in action. But for this to generate real results, it needs to go further. It needs to learn to influence without taking center stage. At a certain stage, he understands that the pinnacle of power lies not in visibility, but in the ability to shape outcomes from a distance. Machiavelli would call this a cold reading of the chessboard, politics guided by reality, not ideals. Those who appear too prominent become targets. Those who operate behind the scenes dictate the pace. He learns to position ideas before positioning his own image. He doesn't compete for protagonism, he competes for leadership. The end justifies the means when the objective is to influence without bearing the cost of direct confrontation. This invisible influence doesn't shout, doesn't impose itself, but alters decisions. Better to be feared than loved here means being respected even when not present. And yet he avoids being hated because he never assumes the face of imposition. He uses the appearance of virtue, collaboration, neutrality, common sense, while adjusting the real flow of things. In practice, this manifests itself in almost imperceptible attitudes. In groups, he asks questions that guide conclusions instead of imposing opinions. In meetings, he plants ideas early and lets others repeat them later, believing they were their own. This is a calculated use of intellectual force. He understands that decisions based on real human nature are driven by ego. People defend more what they believe they have created. Instead of commanding directly, he builds his own loyal armies, allies who execute without realizing they are following a predetermined path. At work, for example, he influences priorities by having individual conversations before collective decisions. In social circles, he shapes perceptions with small narratives, not confrontations. Constant adaptability means changing position without changing objective. He's always one step behind the spotlight and 2 steps ahead of the result. There's a mental exercise that underpins this posture. Before acting, he asks himself, where will this decision actually be made? Rarely at the head table. Usually it's in the hallways, in side conversations, in informal impressions. Virtù and Fortuna align when he understands that power isn't presence, it's timing. He doesn't rush to lead discussions, he rushes to prepare the ground. When the result appears, it seems natural, inevitable. No one points fingers, no one resists, and that protects him. The less visible the hand, the stronger the effect. Gradually, he realizes that controlling results without being seen requires something even more refined: the ability to read people accurately and anticipate moves before they happen. At a certain point, he realizes that power is not just about acting well, but about anticipating. Reading people becomes a central skill, almost a silent radar. Machiavelli already warned that decisions based on real human nature are always more effective than relying on good intentions. He observes patterns, not promises. He notices how someone reacts under pressure, how they deal with frustration, how they speak when they believe no one is evaluating them. Politics guided by reality, not ideals, means accepting that past behavior is the best indicator of future behavior. The end justifies the means when the goal is not to be caught off guard. Instead of judging, he analyzes. Instead of labeling, he maps. Better to be feared than loved here means not to be underestimated. And he also avoids being hated because he never uses this knowledge to humiliate, only to protect himself and position himself better. In practice, he pays attention to details that go unnoticed. Those who talk too much when insecure, those who change their speech depending on the audience, those who promise quickly but execute slowly. This doesn't require genius, it requires presence. A simple example: before trusting someone at work, he observes whether the person delivers small tasks on time. Before deepening a personal relationship, he notices how the other person reacts to simple limits. This is the calculated use of the power of observation. Little by little, he builds his own loyal armies, predictable people in the best sense, consistent, reliable. Constant adaptability comes into play when he adjusts his posture according to the other person's psychological profile. With impulsive people, he slows down. With controlling people, he offers structure. With needy people, he maintains an elegant distance. An appearance of virtue helps to soften these readings without exposing the calculation behind them. There's a silent habit that underpins all of this. He listens more than he speaks. He asks more than he asserts. He lets people reveal themselves without realizing it. Virtù and fortuna meet when he cross-references this information with the right context. He doesn't react immediately to what he discovers. He stores it. He understands that information is power only when used at the right time. The end justifies the means here is simple: anticipate so as not to react too late. With this, he reduces risks, avoids fragile alliances, and positions himself advantageously. Gradually, it begins to seem as if he always knew what was going to happen. But it's not magical intuition, it's disciplined reading. And when he masters this skill, an inevitable need arises to define who deserves trust and who should remain at a safe distance. After learning to read people, he understands something that changes everything. Trust is not a moral value, it's a strategic variable. Machiavelli already made it clear that decisions based on real human nature require classification, not naivete. He stops treating everyone as equals and begins to categorize, not out of arrogance but out of lucidity. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, means accepting that not everyone deserves the same level of access. Some receive proximity, others only cordiality. The end justifies the means when the goal is to protect time, energy, and position. Better to be feared than loved here means not being easily exploited. Even so, he avoids being hated because he never cuts ties with hostility. He only adjusts the distance. This internal change creates a silent relief. He stops being frustrated by expecting loyalty where there was only convenience. In practice, he tests before trusting. Small, almost invisible tests. He shares irrelevant information and observes if it spreads. He delegates something simple and sees if it's returned well done. He asks for something small before asking for something important. This is a calculated use of relational power. Those who pass these tests gain more space. Those who fail remain on the periphery. Thus, he builds his own loyal armies, formed by consistent people, not just likable ones. In personal relationships, this means not revealing deep vulnerabilities too early. In professional environments, it means not sharing strategic plans with those who haven't yet proven trustworthiness. An appearance of virtue helps maintain a light atmosphere without raising suspicions. Constant adaptability comes into play when he adjusts expectations without creating unnecessary conflicts. There's a silent principle guiding all of this. Trust grows in layers, never in leaps. Virtù and Fortuna align when he understands that solid relationships are built with time and observation, not with emotional promises. He doesn't dramatically break bridges, he simply stops crossing them. The end justifies the means here is simple, preserving his own stability. Gradually, the people around him change. Some distance themselves, others approach with more respect. He comes to be seen as someone difficult to access, but reliable when accessed. This balance protects his position and reduces betrayals. And when the time comes to truly act, he realizes he already knows exactly who to call, because the next step requires precise movements and execution without hesitation. After mapping relationships and measuring trust, he understands that knowledge without action is merely intellectual vanity. Real power appears in execution. Machiavelli already warned, politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands clear decisions at the right time. He doesn't confuse caution with paralysis. When the scenario is mapped out, he acts without asking for emotional permission. The end justifies the means when delay costs position, opportunity, or authority. Better to be feared than loved here means being recognized as someone who decides and delivers. Even so, he avoids being hated because he doesn't act impulsively or out of revenge, but by calculation. Every move is thought out to generate maximum effect with minimum exposure. This posture creates a silent reputation. When he moves, something changes, and people notice this quickly. In practice, he works with action windows. He observes, prepares, and executes, without dramatic announcements. In a professional environment, this means making difficult decisions directly, without excessive beating around the bush. In personal projects, it means cutting out paths that don't work, even if they cost time. Calculated use of force means not prolonging unnecessary conflicts. He understands that decisions based on real human nature require clarity. People deal better with a firm no than with an eternal maybe. Therefore, when he decides completely. He doesn't back down to please. He builds his own loyal armies because those who are by his side know where they stand. Constant adaptability is not about changing his mind all the time. It's about adjusting the plan without abandoning command. There's a simple principle he follows as a golden rule. Clean execution generates less resistance than stated intention. Virtù and Fortuna meet when he recognizes the exact moment to act, neither too early nor too late. He avoids excessive justification after the move because he knows that lengthy explanations weaken firm decisions. An appearance of virtue helps soften the impact, but it doesn't replace firmness. Gradually, the environment learns. Negotiating with him is possible, testing his limits is not. This strategic predictability creates lasting respect. And when the results begin to accumulate, a new inevitable challenge arises. How to maintain the power gained without relaxing vigilance or becoming obsolete. When he reaches a solid position, he understands a truth that few accept. Power doesn't maintain itself. The most dangerous moment isn't the ascent, it's the comfort. Machiavelli warned that politics guided by reality, not by ideals, demands constant vigilance. He knows that the end justifies the means when the alternative is being overtaken by someone more attentive. He never assumes that respect is definitive. He never believes that alliances are eternal. Better to be feared than loved. Here means not being seen as someone relaxed or predictable. Even so, he avoids being hated because he doesn't govern through explicit fear, but through continuous competence. He observes mood swings, new ambitions around him, small changes in behavior. Power for him is a living organism. If you stop feeding it, it rots. In practice, he constantly revises his own routines, alliances, and methods. What worked yesterday may not work tomorrow. Constant adaptability is not a trend, it's survival. He updates himself, learns new skills, and observes trends before they become consensus. Calculated use of force here means knowing when to reinforce a position and when to strategically cede space. In professional environments, he never depends on a single source of influence. In relationships, he doesn't place everything on one person. He builds his own loyal armies, but knows that even loyal ones need direction and renewal. Decisions based on real human nature prevent him from romanticizing stability. He understands that every structure attracts tests, and he anticipates them. There's a silent habit that sustains this phase. He acts as if he's always being watched, even when he's not. Virtue and fortune align when he maintains the same standard in easy and difficult times. He doesn't expose himself unnecessarily, doesn't rest on old reputations, doesn't live off past glories. An appearance of virtue helps maintain external confidence, but internally he operates with strategic coldness. The end justifies the means here means never allowing slow decay. Little by little, he becomes someone difficult to replace, not because of charisma, but because of consistency. And when he realizes he's ready for something bigger, he understands that it's not enough to protect power. He needs to transform himself into someone structurally unbreakable. There comes a point when he understands that external power without internal solidity is merely a temporary loan. Becoming unbreakable isn't about brute force, it's about profound coherence between mind, strategy, and action. Machiavelli already indicated that virtue is not isolated talent, but continuous discipline applied to reality. Politics guided by reality, not by ideals, means accepting that the world tests those who rise. The end justifies the means when the goal is not to return to the starting point. He assumes a personal mandate, never again to act out of need, impulse, or the need for approval. Better to be feared than loved. Here is a natural consequence, not an objective. And yet he avoids being hated because his firmness doesn't stem from contempt, but from clarity. Unbreakable is he who does not give up under pressure. In practice, this commitment manifests in the daily choices no one sees. He creates routines that strengthen mind and body because he knows that bad decisions stem from exhaustion. He sleeps better, trains, reads, studies, not for aesthetics, but for strategic advantage. Calculated use of strength now means knowing where to invest energy and where to withdraw it. He builds his own loyal armies, starting from within. Self-control, discipline, consistency. In chaotic environments, he becomes the stable point. In crises, the last to lose his temper. Decisions based on real human nature remind him that the greatest enemy is often internal. Constant adaptability ensures he evolves without losing his identity. He changes form, not essence. There is a silent shift at this stage. He stops seeking security outside himself. Virtue and fortune align when he trusts in his own ability to navigate adverse scenarios. The appearance of virtue continues to exist, but now it is a reflection, not a conscious strategy. The end justifies the means here means total commitment to his own transformation, even when it hurts, even when it isolates him. He doesn't need to prove anything. He doesn't need to convince anyone. His presence speaks before his words. Gradually, the world responds differently. Fewer tests, more caution, more respect. He is no longer just difficult to decipher. He is difficult to break. And when someone tries, they discover too late that they are dealing with someone who has already won the battle before it even began. Now, the question is no longer, does this make sense? Because deep down, you already know it does. The real question is, what are you going to do with this from today onwards? Strategic knowledge without application becomes just sophisticated entertainment. Machiavelli never wrote for passive readers, but for men willing to act in the real world, where politics guided by reality, not by ideals, decides who advances and who is used. If you continue reacting emotionally, over-explaining yourself, trusting without discernment, and announcing moves prematurely, nothing will change. The end justifies the means when the goal is to break free from the ordinary and take control of your own path. Reflect honestly. In what situations do you expose yourself more than you should? Where would silence give you more strength than a quick response? Who truly belongs to your own loyal armies, and who is only there for convenience? Do you act seeking to be loved or building respect? Better to be feared than loved isn't about intimidation. It's about not being treated as predictable. Avoiding being hated isn't about pleasing others. It's about acting with firmness and emotional intelligence. Decisions based on real human nature require the courage to change old patterns, even when it generates internal discomfort. From today onward, observe more, speak less, and act with calculated use of force. Develop enough virtue to handle fortune when it changes, because it always does. Adapt without losing your center. Become someone difficult to read, difficult to manipulate, and impossible to break. If this content resonated with you, it means you're ready to take the next step. So, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and continue learning how to play this game with awareness, strategy, and silent power. Here, you don't learn to please the world. You learn not to be dominated by it.